Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to discuss about the living world. Living world. So here, what is living? Any organism which can able to perform its life process is known as living. So in previous NCERT, so here the characteristics of living organisms are given, and in the new edition, it was deleted. So, but even though we have to look into the characters of living organisms, that is, so here growth, reproduction, growth, reproduction, metabolism, metabolism, and cellular interactions, cellular interactions, etc. Were exhibited by the living organisms. So here living organisms exhibit different characters like growth, reproduction, metabolism, and cellular interaction. So here growth. So what is growth? So growth is a permanent, irreversible increase in size is known as growth. So in non-living organisms, the growth is from external. So in non-living organisms, the growth is from external. So non-living means here sand mounds, boulders, sand mounds, boulders, etc. What are the non-living? And here, due to the accumulation of that is surface material, that is accumulation of dust and other particles, dust and other particles. So it looks like increase in size. For example, sand mounds, boulders. So due to the accumulation of dust and other materials, so there is an increase in size takes place in the non-living objects. That is, it is from external. It is the growth is from outside, external in non-living. Whereas in living things, the growth is from internal. The growth is from internal, and here there are twin characters of growth, that is increase in size and increase in mass, and that is increase in cell number. So here, so twin characters of growth, one is a increase in cell number and another one is a increase in size, is known as twin characters of growth. So here the conclusion for growth is it is a not defining property of living organism. It is a not defining property of living organism, because both living and non-living, both living and non-living exhibit the growth. That is why it is non-defining property of a living organism. Whereas come to the reproduction, so anything which can able to that means it can able to produce offsprings, or any living organism which can able to produce living organism is known as that is reproduction. So here, so most of the unicellular organisms uh, elicit asexual mode of reproduction. That means only single parent is involved, whereas sexually reproducing organisms, two parents are involved, that is male and female, right? So here reproduction is also non-defining property of living organism, because within the living some organisms cannot able to reproduce and some can able to reproduce. That is why reproduction is not defining property. Coming to the metabolism, so here metabolism means the sum total of all the reactions which occur in a living body is known as metabolism. So here metabolism is of two types, anabolism and catabolism. So anabolism is a constructive process, whereas catabolism is a destructive process. So here in the catabolism process, what happens? So breakdown of complex molecules into simpler molecules takes place. Breakdown of complex molecules into simpler. Catabolism means breakdown of complex molecules into simpler molecules. Example, respiration. Whereas anabolism means construction of a complex molecule from simpler molecules. That is a photosynthesis is a example for anabolism. And here for the metabolism, the conclusion is it is a defining property of all the living organism, because without exception all the living organisms elicit metabolism. That is why it is a defining property of living organism. And cellular interactions, self consciousness, and etc., they come under the defining property of living organisms. Okay, now let us discuss about what is biodiversity. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity. Biodiversity. So, in the planet or Earth, so many living organisms exist. So here all the different types of species, so which are present on planet or Earth, is referred to biodiversity. So far 1.7 to 1.8 million species, 1.7 to 1.8 million species were described. It is very important. So remember the number 1.7 to 1.2 million or 17 lakhs to 18 lakhs. So this question is asked previously in the NEET examination. So you need to remember the number. So 1.7 to 1.8 million species were so far described. Right. Right. So here, so there are millions of plants and animals in the world. There are millions of plants and animals in the world. So we know the plants and animals in our own area by their local names. By their local names. So these local names would vary from place to place, country to country. These local names vary from place to place, country to country, and even within a country also. That is, probably you would recognize the confusion that would be created if you did not find ways and means to talk to each other to refer to organisms we are talking about. Hence, there is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms such that particular organism is known by the same name all over the world. So hence there is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms in order to avoid the confusions, because so we know plants and animals in our own area by their local names, and these local names vary place to place and sometimes within the country also, right? So hence there is a need to be standardized a naming of living organisms such that particular organism is known by the same name all over the world, and this process is called as a nomenclature. So nomenclature is nothing but naming of plant or organism, right? So here nomenclature or naming is only possible when the organism is described correctly and we know to what organism the name is attached to. So this is identification. This is identification, right? So here, so very important. So in order to facilitate the study, number of scientists have established procedures to assign a scientific name to each known organism. So this accepts acceptable to biologists all over the world. So for plants, scientific names are based on agreed principles and criteria which are provided in International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, that is ICBN. ICBN. So for plants, so the naming related is provided by International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. So whereas in animals, for animals, ICZN, that is International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. So the scientific name ensure that each organism has only one common name, and uh, every organism here it has two names. One is a genus and species. That is known as a binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature. Very important in IPE as well as objective point of view. So binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature. So here if you look at into this, each name has a, so here so biologists follow universally accepted principle to provide scientific names to known organisms. So each name has two components, that is generic name, nothing but genus, and a specific epithet, nothing but species. So genus and species. So the system of providing a name with two components is called binomial nomenclature. So system of providing with two components is called binomial nomenclature. One is genus and other one is a species, or generic name or specific epithet. Right here, for example, mango. So what is the scientific name of mango? Mangifera indica. So here Mangifera is a genus and indica is a species. Genus and species, these are the two components. And this binomial nomenclature system, the concept was for the first time given by the Gaspard Bohin, but it was popularized by the C.V. Linnaeus. So here in our NCERT, so by this binomial nomenclature system was given by Carolus von Linnaeus, right? So we need to read it as C.V. Linnaeus. C.V. Linnaeus. So binomial nomenclature was given by Carolus von Linnaeus. So what is the importance of Carolus von Linnaeus? So he was considered as father of taxonomy. C.V. Linnaeus considered as father of father of taxonomy, and he proposed two kingdom system of classification. Two kingdom system of classification, which we had studied in the biological classification chapter, and he also proposed a sexual system of classification. Sexual system of classification, and he also wrote a book, Systema Naturae. Systema Naturae, right? So here the binomial nomenclature naming system was given by C.V. Linnaeus, that is Carolus von Linnaeus. So is being practiced by biologists all over the world. This naming system using a two-word format was found convenient. So let us take the example of mango to understand the way of providing scientific names better. So the scientific name of mango is written as Mangifera indica, and let us see how it is a binomial name. And in this name, Mangifera represents the genus, while indica represents particular species or specific epithet. So here some universal rules of nomenclature are as follows. So here there are some universal rules of nomenclature are as follows. It is very important for IB as well as a objective point of view. So you have to remember all these rules. The first rule is the Biological names are generally in Latin. Biological, that is scientific names. Biological names are scientific names. Scientific names are generally in Latin and are written in italics. So biological names are generally in Latin and generally written in italics. And they are Latinized or derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. So biological names are Latinized or so derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. Okay. So అది ఏ కంట్రీ నుంచి ఆరిజినేట్ అయినా కూడా ఇట్ ఈస్ కన్సిడర్డ్ యాజ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. This is the first point. Second point. So the first word in biological name represents the first word in biological represents the genus. So here Mangifera, it is the first word, that is genus. Whereas the second component denotes the specific epithet, species, specific epithet, that is second point. And third point, so both the words in a biological name when handwritten or separately underlined or printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. So when handwritten, these biological names must be separately underlined, that is genus name and species name. Genus name and species name. For example, potato. So what is the scientific name of potato? Solanum tuberosum. Solanum tuberosum. So here Solanum is a genus and a tuberosum is a species. So we have to separately underline. And here if printed in print, if it is printed in italic style, so there is no need to underline separately. Okay. So here that italics style is looks like this. So Mangifera indica, or more or less it looks like this. Mangifera Mangifera indica. So this is italic style. So if it is printed in italic style, no need to underline separately genus and species, right? And the fourth point is the first word denoting the genus starts with a capital letter. So always the first letter starts with capital, while the specific epithet starts with a small letter. It can be illustrated with the example Mangifera indica. So it is a small letter. In species, I is a small letter, right? So these are the 4 points of so universal rules. The first point is biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics, and here they are Latinized or derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. And second point is every biological name have two components, that is genus and species. First word in biological name represents the genus and the second component denotes the specific epithet. So both the words in a biological name when handwritten are separately underlined or printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. And here the first word denoting the genus starts with capital letter and the second word starts with small letter. And here the last point is so name of the author. So name of the author appears after the specific epithet, that is at the end of the biological name, and is written in abbreviated form. For example, CV linnaeus, okay, the scientific name for mango. That is, so Mangifera indica Linn. Mangifera indica Linn. So the scientist name, the author name must be written in an abbreviated form, Linn, Linn. So it indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus. So if we describe any species, we have to add our name to the that biological name in abbreviated form, right? Since it is nearly impossible to study all the living organisms which are present on Earth, that is, so it is nearly impossible to study all the living organisms. It is necessary to devise some means to make this possible, and this process is known as a classification. So it is impossible to study all the living organisms which are present on Earth. So there is a there is a device that is to make this possible, to make the classification possible. So this process is called as classification. So classification is the process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories. Classification is nothing but anything, it is grouped into convenient categories based on easily observable morphological character. So easily observable characters. For example, we easily recognize groups such as plants or animals, or dogs or cats or insects. The moment we use any of these terms, we associate certain characters with the organism in that group. So here, for example, uh, if in plants, if we try to talk of wheat, the picture in each of our minds will be of wheat plants, not of rice or any other plant. Hence, all these, so dogs, cats, mammals, wheat, rice, plants, animals, etc. So here, so they are convenient categories we use it to study organisms. The scientific term for these categories is taxa, right? So if we take a plant, within the plant, so we'll come across different types of plants: wheat, rice, maize, etc. Right? So here, so this wheat is one taxa, one category. Rice is another category. Maize is another taxa. Like that in animals, dogs, cats, rats, they represents taxa. So the scientific term for these categories is taxa. Okay, right. So here, let us talk about taxonomy. Taxonomy. So based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. Based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. This process of classification is called as taxonomy. So this process of classification is known as taxonomy. So here there are mainly four components in the taxonomy. There are mainly four components in the taxonomy. That is very important components of very important for objective. So components of taxonomy: characterization, identification, classification, nomenclature are the processes that are basic to taxonomy. Basic to taxonomy. Characterization, identification, classification, nomenclature, these are the basic components of taxonomy. These are the basic components of taxonomy, right? So which are the following are the basic components of taxonomy? Which of the following are not the basic component of taxonomy? So మన క్వశ్చన్ ఎట్లయినా అడగవచ్చు ఎగ్జామ్లో. సో యూ నీడ్ టు రిమెంబర్ దిస్ బేసిక్ కాంపోనెంట్స్ ఆఫ్ taxonomy. And here taxonomy is not something new. Human beings have always been interested in knowing more and more about the various kinds of organisms, particularly with reference to their own use. In early days, human beings needed to find sources for their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. Hence, the earliest classification were based on the uses of various organisms. We had discussed this in biological classification. So, early man classified the living organisms based on his needs, that is, for food, clothing, and shelter. So, human beings were since long not only interested in knowing more about different kinds of organisms and their diversities. So, here Aristotle was the first person who gave the scientific basis for classification. That is, he classified the plants into three groups: herbs, shrubs, trees, and animals into two groups. That is, those with blood and those without red blood. And here now let us talk about the systematics. 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 So, what is systematics? So, the literal meaning of systematics is a listing in a systematic way. So, listing of things in a particular way or particular arrangement. So, here the definition of systematics is a study of different kinds of organisms, study of different kinds of organisms, different kinds of organisms, their diversities, their diversities, and and evolutionary relationship among them. So, study of different kinds of organisms, their diversities, and evolutionary relationship among them is known as systematics. Okay. So, here study of different kinds of organisms. So, as we know that the definition of biodiversity, so many organisms are exist on Earth or planet, and their diversities. So, every organism have specific diversity, and but also a relationship among them. That means evolutionary relationship, particularly evolutionary relationship. So, పాస్ట్లో ఎట్లా ఉంది ఆర్గానిజం, ప్రజెంట్లో ఎట్లా ఉన్నది. పాస్ట్ మీన్స్ థౌజండ్స్ ఆఫ్ ఇయర్స్ బ్యాక్, అండ్ ప్రజెంట్లో ఎట్లా ఉన్నది అంటే ఎవల్యూషన్ జరిగినప్పుడు ఆర్గానిజం క్యారెక్టర్స్ అనేది చేంజ్ అవుతూ వస్తూ ఉంటాయి. సో దట్ ఈస్ దట్ చేంజ్ మే బీ మార్ఫలాజికల్, మే బీ జెనెటికల్, వాట్ ఎవర్ ఇట్ మే బీ. సో this is known as systematics, and here the word systematics is derived from the Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of organisms. And Linnaeus, C.V. Linnaeus wrote a book. The name of the book is Systema Naturae. Systema Naturae. So, Systema Naturae as the title of his publication. Whose publication? C.V. Linnaeus, Carolus von Linnaeus. So, the scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification. So, remember for this point. So, remember this point, very important. So, the scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, classification. Okay. So, systematics takes into account evolutionary relationship between organisms.